Hello and welcome to Comedy in a Nutshell. You know, comedian Bo Burnham once said, "Comedy is very strange to me and I don't fully understand its purpose or function." I agree with that sentiment, and in an effort to better understand comedy, this podcast gathers the great and the good in comedy to see if they can understand it for us. I love talking to comedians about comedy, and if you like to hear what they have to say as much as I do, then please like, subscribe, rate, review and share the podcast. Thank you. My guest this episode was once described as having funny bones and an easy warmth on stage. With this genuine warmth, she makes emceeing appear effortless, and her 2020 show Contender received a difficult-to-secure Best Debut nomination at that year's Leicester Comedy Festival. It's stand-up comedian Fiona Ridgewell. Hello.
Hello. How are you?
I'm good. How you been?
Perfect. Lovely.
And let's jump in.
Yeah, cool. Lovely.
So when did you first encounter comedy in your life?
Do you know what? I was thinking about that this week because I think it might be coming up like 10 years since I started doing it.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a bit of a milestone. I think like towards the end of this year, beginning of next year, it'll be like 10 years. So 9 years really.
Mm-hmm.
But before that, I don't think I had ever seen any live comedy before I started doing it. So my first experience of a comedy club, actually, that is a lie. One show I saw because my friend Joey Page, who's another comedian, we went to school together.
Mm-hmm.
And he invited me to come and watch him at a club called Top Secret.
Yeah.
And I watched him and I was like, wow. And he was like, oh, you should give it a go. And I was like, oh, okay then. And then I just gave it a go. So that was the one time and then just threw myself in. Aside from that, I'd only seen like the odd DVD of like Lee Evans.
Right.
Or I remember my sister had like Alan Carr's, I think it was called The Tooth Fairy.
Yeah.
His show called that. And I watched that. And I loved it, but I never thought I would end up doing it when I saw those.
Yeah. So how was it when you tried it for the first time?
Well, I was a bit sneaky. I did a little course first.
Yeah.
So that gave me the confidence to get up there, I think. I think without that, I don't know if I actually would have done it. I think that sort of gave me the idea that even if you go up and one person laughs, it's not been a failure. So, which now I'm like, oh, it still is if only one person laughs. But yeah, at the time, I just made me go, okay, so nothing could go that wrong. And it was just nice to have this sort of free opportunity to perform because I'd always been into like acting and stuff and dancing.
Yeah.
But with those, you're constantly auditioning and hoping that someone will allow you to perform. Whereas with comedy, because of open mics, you can just get up and start.
Yeah.
So that's what I liked about it.
Well, there's a few things in there. Let's talk about your course. What course did you go on?
So there's another comedian called Kate Smurthwaite.
Yeah.
She does a course and I did it with her. And she was great and she's always been really supportive ever since. So yeah, I think maybe there was probably about 10 of us.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'm the only one that's carried on.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I think a lot of people do it and they're like, right, I've done the showcase, I've had my taste of it. I'll never do it again. And then other people are like, I'm doing it and I'm doing it forever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's one of those things a lot of people like to tick off their bucket list. Oh, right. I've done stand-up comedy. I don't need to ever do it again.
So what was the impetus for you that keeps you going?
I think just like striving to get better, I think. Because where I used to dance, you're always trying to sort of reach for perfection with dance. But with comedy, you can never get it perfect because you could think you've got your set perfect. You can have the gig of your life.
Yeah.
And then the next day, or even sometimes the same day, you go to a different room.
Yeah.
And the audience are like, what's this about? This isn't funny. It's so like, it's not that sort of like binary where it's like could be a death or like you smash it. But there is a point where sometimes I've done clubs where they've got an upstairs and a downstairs, and you do downstairs, you're like, oh my God, I am good at this. And then you go upstairs, you're like, oh no, I'm not. Thank you for reminding me there's still work to be done. So yeah, I quite like the fact that you're always tweaking it. And And also, I think it's the only place where you're really like pulled into the moment.
Right.
You can't really think about the past or the present. You just have to be in the room with those people on that day, in that moment, and what happens happens.
Yeah.
And that's an experience between that 100 people that can't be like you can't make it happen exactly that way again.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
I like that about it.
How does it make you feel when you, like you said, you can smash a set and then you basically do the same set again, and you get a completely different response to it?
Yeah, I think at the beginning that's harder
Mm.
because your initial reaction is to go, well, it's because I'm not good at this.
Yeah.
And you doubt yourself. Whereas I
Mm.
think when you're gigging so regularly, you have enough in the tank to go, well, this has gone well enough times for me to know I'm not insane to be doing this. Even though that 50 people have just looked at me like I'm crazy, I know it isn't because the past 5 gigs have been enjoyable and had a nice response.
Yeah.
So I think that's why comedians are always like, you have to gig, because that is your like evidence
Yeah.
to yourself that no, I'm good at this. I don't need to be validated by every audience.
Right.
I just have to shake that one off and come back the next time more relaxed and more present, I think.
Yeah.
I'm a bit wanky sometimes, Mark.
Well, if you can't be wanky in a conversation with me, then when can you?
Yeah, do you know what I mean?
This is what I want to hear. You mentioned acting and dance. You studied dance, didn't you? Is that right?
Yeah, so I did a dance degree
Yeah.
for 3 years at Chichester University, and then I did a year in like musical theatre.
Right.
But I'm pretty much tone deaf, so that was that dream dead in the water. Had to let that one go. There was not enough evidence for me to think, no, I am good at this. It's like, you are not good at this.
That's a long way round to find out that you're not right for it
Well,
to
oh my
study that long.
God. Well, the dancing I was, but the singing, and I had so many singing lessons, and I even got hypnotized for stage fright. I went to like Harley Street and got hypnotized, Mark. Like I am
Wow.
insane sometimes. And I was still like, why can't I sing? I've been hypnotized. It's not in my wheelhouse. I can't. Um, so yeah, that was unfortunate because that was the dream.
Fair enough. So you mentioned 10 years in comedy. So I think it was 10 years ago. Weren't you in a Doritos commercial? Is that right?
Oh yeah, I did a little Doritos commercial. It was where they were all oh, what do you call it? The mariachi bands. Is that right?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
with the big sombreros and that.
Yeah.
I actually did an advert recently for something,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like an online advert. So, because I think a lot of people are doing that now because
Yeah.
TikTok and Instagram and everything's so huge.
Yeah.
But it's an online advert, and someone who I used to do comedy with called me, and he was like, I'm doing this advert. I'm like producing it, directing it,
Yeah.
and I've got this part, and I just think you would be perfect for it. Like when I thought of it, I was like, this is Fiona. I was like, he was like, can you do it? And I was like, I can do it. Yeah, absolutely. I turned up. He put me in a wheelie bin. That was the part. I had to pop out of a wheelie bin. So he's written down like bin lady and been like, out of all the hundreds of people I know, who would be good? Fiona Ridgewell. She's made to be put in a wheelie bin. I nailed it. I haven't seen it to be fair, but yeah. So I spent half the day crouching in a wheelie bin. It's not that glamorous. It sounds like it is when you're like, I'm on TV. I'm doing adverts. I'm in a
Yeah.
wheelie bin.
Yeah. The glorious, glamorous
Yeah.
world of entertainment. Wonderful.
Exactly. Got to take it where you can.
Tiny sidebar. Many years ago, before you were born, when I was doing drama,
Oh, right.
I had to write a short play, and I wrote the play about, basically it was a courtroom drama, but what was on trial was the 7 deadly sins. It's a very hacked premise, but it was fun. And I got one of my oldest friends. I wanted him to be the judge, and he would insisted he would only do it if he was standing in a bin.
What?
It was very Beckett, you know.
What? So could the audience see the bin, or was that
Yeah,
behind?
No, that was
Right.
his like I don't know what, like, podium. I don't know what they call it in a courtroom.
Oh, I
He was
see.
standing
Right.
in the
Yeah, yeah,
bin.
yeah. Yeah,
It's very
that's
Samuel Beckett to be sat in a
and
bin
also it's
tote.
quite a bit of artistic direction from the actor to be like, I know this is your concept and your writing, but put me in a bin for no
Yeah.
reason whatsoever,
Yeah.
and we won't mention it.
Yeah.
Did you let him do it?
Oh yeah, of course.
Oh, ma.
I'd said if anyone says, "Oh, that's an interesting metaphor," I'll just say, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah." I'll just agree with.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was
yeah,
a
it was.
metaphor.
It's
Yeah, I
got
came up with that all along. Yeah,
lots of deep underlying meanings that you will never understand.
yeah, yeah. No, I just wanted to be in a bin. Don't know why. There you go.
To be fair, a lot of the times when I go and see films and stuff, if people are like, that was amazing, I'm just like, oh, maybe I was too thick to understand that one. So I just would have walked away from your one being like, wow, I bet that bin thing was really like inventive and meaningful, but I didn't get it.
Nah.
Never mind.
Okay, so with your blossoming career in comedy, you did all the competitions. So you think you're funny, Joker's Joker. I think you did.
Yeah, so I did some quite random ones because I think the big ones are like the BBC Comedy Awards,
Yeah.
which I don't know if I've actually ever entered, to be fair. But yeah, so you think you're funny. I did that. That was in, everyone was like, you have to do it within your first year. If you don't, you're cheating. You're cheating if you don't do it within your first year.
Yeah.
So like 3 months in, I did signed up for So You Think You're Funny. And then later on down your career, there's like people doing it who are 4 years in, and you're like, oh, I could have waited. I could have got further in that, couldn't I? And then I had an unfortunate one as well with comedy. It was called Comedy Nights, and it had been going for years.
Mm.
And I got into the final of that. And on the day of the final, the venue, all the air conditioning units broke or something, and they couldn't do the final. So I still list
Oh,
that one as a final because I got through, I did all the stages,
yeah.
like, the heats, the quarters, the semis, got into the final, and then we never actually got to perform the final.
Yeah.
Um,
So technically, you won
yeah, we can say I won.
then.
Actually, I should probably just say that winner of. Yeah, I'm going to change that on my next Edinburgh poster. And then the most recent one was Funny Women.
Yes.
I was a finalist in that. But again, another weird one, because it was in COVID.
Yeah.
So we did the final and we did it at the Comedy Store, but all the audience was, because it was still, I think it was in like the September of 2020. So it
Yeah.
was still really at the height of what was going on with COVID. So all the audience was industry professionals.
Hmm.
So reviewers, I don't know if there are any agents there, some TV people.
Yeah.
So you are pretty much, and then it was being filmed and like live streamed out.
Yeah.
But that was, I sort of enjoyed that more in a way, because it was like, I just have to perform this like this is the best gig of my life.
Yeah.
Whereas I think if there's 400 people there,
Yeah.
there is the chance that that could not go your way, and it's clear because there's silence in the room.
Yeah.
Whereas this time I was like, oh, this can't go badly because no one can say I died, because there isn't an opportunity to die because there's not enough people to be laughing almost. So it was quite freeing, that experience.
Yeah.
But still would have been nice to do it in like a
Yeah.
live. I think they normally get to it in like the Bloomsbury Theatre and stuff. So that would have
Mm.
been nice. But hey ho, still a good experience.
Well, they say the comedian feeds off the energy in the room, but I suppose if you're not expecting anyone to laugh, like, it's kind of
Yeah, you just
liberating
have
in a
to
way.
bring your own. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. That is exactly how it felt. It was like, well, I just have to enjoy myself and imagine that these people are too. And there'd be little like titters, but obviously when they're and because it was also like social distance.
Yeah.
So in the Comedy Store that normally seats 400 people, there was probably like 15 people watching us, if that. And then the other girls who were also in the final,
Yeah.
and we weren't going to laugh at each other. I'm lying, we did. Very nice environment.
So how do you find competitions in general? I mean, obviously you've mentioned there you've had live in the room, you've had the Zoom version. How is being competitive with your peers?
I don't like it.
No.
Like, genuinely, I don't like it. I think um comedy is changing so quickly now. So when I started, you had to enter them because if you wanted to be seen by an agent or a TV person,
Hmm.
you needed to get into those finals to be seen by the right people to get to the next level.
Right.
Whereas now with TikTok, Instagram, it's that your videos are spat out to so many people. You could just fall on the lap of someone now. So I don't think they're as necessary now. But the reason I didn't like them is I think it stunts your growth. I think everyone's like aiming for this perfect 5 minute set. I have to get my 5 minutes for this competition. It has to be brilliant. This 5 minutes has to be punchy. It has to be that.
Yeah.
So everyone becomes like this. A lot of people become short joke writers to get as many jokes into that 5 minutes as possible.
Right.
But actually, I think over a 20 minute, if I'd allowed myself, I probably would be more of a storyteller and more conversational. And I think for years I was like, no, I have to be a joke writer. I have to get these joke.
Mm.
And then when you get to 20, you're like, I'm a completely different comedian to what that made me sort of be for the first 5 years of my career. So that first 5 years, you're almost working towards something, which there are positives because it does get your writing tighter, it gets your presence up.
Yeah.
But where I'd done acting, I think I had a little bit of stage presence. I don't really need that bit, and also it gives you that that feeling of pressure being in competition,
Right.
because there is an instant outcome. But yeah, I think if I was starting now, I probably wouldn't enter as many of them. I probably wouldn't bother with them, to be honest. I don't know if that's the right or wrong answer, but I think it should be a personal thing. And I think,
Yeah.
unfortunately, you look around, you go, well, everyone else is entering them, so I should enter them because that's the way to do it.
Right.
But really, when you look at successful comedians, there is no right or wrong way to do it. They've all got there through very different ways.
Yeah.
So that's my thought on competitions. Have you ever gone and watched one?
Yeah. Yeah. I've watched a few. I've seen. I saw this year's Funny Women online. It was streamed on Netflix.
Okay. How did you feel watching them? Like, do you feel more nervous for them? Do you feel like there's more? Because there is always energy in the room of comedy,
Yeah.
isn't there?
It's funny because for me, and I think most audience members, it's just a mixed bill.
Right,
You're just
yeah.
seeing a mixed bill, and at the end, oh, someone's like crowned, but that's kind of a separate thing.
Yeah.
The
Oh,
audience don't
okay.
see
That's
it that
interesting.
way as as a panel of judges would see it. The panel is looking for something new, something different, or
Yeah.
whatever they're looking for.
Whereas there are competitions, I can't remember which ones they are, to be honest. But
Mm.
sometimes, oh, I did one, Golden Jester. I think I got
Right,
to the final of that one, actually. And the audience are given voting forms.
right,
So you are the judge, you are the audience, and you are given a bit of power.
yeah,
Like, I can't remember what the percentages of how much the audience votes count, but
yeah,
you are meant to tick what you think of people. And I think
yeah,
Leicester Square, new comedian, I think that does it,
yeah,
because sometimes people turn up and I've got 40 mates with them.
yeah, exactly, yeah, yeah.
um, which fair dues. If I had 40 mates, I'd bring them.
Well, I mean, this is it. If you give an audience a vote, they just pack it. It's like having
Yeah,
a clapometer kind of scenario. So,
yeah,
no, I applaud the loudest. Well, I brought more people, so
yeah. I've got a good friend. And I remember texting him and being like, "Oh my God, you're in the final. Congratulations." He was like, "Fiona, I bought 35 friends to send me." And I was like, "Oh, mate, well done." But he's a good comedian, but he was just so honest about it. He was like, "Yeah, just brought me mates."
yeah. Well, competition of another sort then. 2020, as you already mentioned, finalists on Funny Women, but at the beginning of the year, pre-lockdown, Leicester Comedy Festival, you were
Oh
nominated for
yeah.
Best Debut.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that actually,
Yeah.
because again, that was another weird one in that. So you fill out an application form to perform at Leicester,
Yeah.
and my friend Maddie Campion, who's a comedian,
Mm-hmm.
she's really good at knowing everything, when all the deadlines are. Like, she's all like, "Fiona, have you done this? You need to do this. Fiona, you're applying for Leicester. We need to get our applications in." So, great, Maddie. So we sat in like a five guys and did the applications, and I'm like computer illiterate. So she's like literally doing mine, and I didn't know there's a box that you can tick which says, "Do you want, like, would you allow the judges to come in? Basically,
Mm.
do you want to be judged?"
Yeah.
Which I would have said no to, and she just ticked it. So I didn't even know that that was even an option, to be honest.
Yeah.
So then did the show, and it was just one of those where I don't think the show was fully formed, to be honest. It was about, I was doing boxing at the time,
Yeah.
I was training for a white collar fight. So it was a lot about that and the people that I'd met on that journey and why I thought I was doing the boxing and all this stuff.
Mm.
It was just a really nice group of people in the audience. And I think we just all had a real laugh together. Um, and then when the nominations come out, I started getting messages saying, "Oh, congratulations, Fiona." And I was like, what are people talking about? So that was, but I was actually like, that one, I think I shed a little tear because I was like, oh, that's really nice to
Mm.
be acknowledged. Um, because I'd never really written an hour's show. So
Yeah.
for someone to be like, I enjoyed her across a full hour, because that is just you holding that hour together.
Yeah.
Um, was I thought was really complimentary. I think that's probably one of my like proudest ones so far, really.
Yeah.
And because it was so unexpected as well.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I was talking to someone just recently about Leicester versus Edinburgh.
Yeah.
As a performer doing Edinburgh, you would do a week, 2 weeks, or the whole month.
Yeah, Edinburgh's just a different beast
Yeah.
in the amount of pressure you feel because you've put so much money in it.
Yes.
Like you've put time, you've put energy, but also financially, most comedians go up there knowing this is a big loss.
Mm.
So something has to come out of this because I remember early on speaking to a comedian that was doing really well. And I was like, oh, well done. Like, you sold out the whole run. Like, that's amazing.
Mm.
And he was like, yeah, but I'm still at a loss because even selling out with all the PR, with your director, with the accommodation, with the money for the venue,
Mm.
it's impossible for you to make your money back. The only way you make your money back is if you get some big work off the back of who might come into that show when you're up there.
Yeah.
So it's a big risk, Edinburgh.
Yeah.
And yet we all keep doing it.
Well, that's the question. There's a few comedians I've spoken to who are now saying that they're not bothering with it anymore. Do you feel like it's pricing performers out of the market kind of thing?
Yeah, I do. And I'm the idiot that's still going up there this year. But I'm not gonna. I've decided now that the reason I do comedy is because I really love it and enjoy it.
Yeah.
So I'm not gonna make it this massive stress on my life. So I'm not gonna go to one of the what they call the big four venues and pay thousands of pounds for it. So I've got quite a. Do you ever go up to Edinburgh?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I guess you
This will
do.
be my
Yeah.
15th year. Yeah.
Okay, right. So I've been given the Banshee Labyrinth, the chamber
Oh, I
room.
love that venue.
Yeah, so I really like the venue. It's at 1:10 in the afternoon,
Mm.
which I'm a bit like, is that all right? But also, I did around 6 o'clock last year,
Mm.
and that was so competitive because people have already bought their
Yeah.
tickets to see the big shows, and everyone debuts at 5, 6 o'clock. So I feel
Yeah.
like 1 o'clock might actually be quite nice because it won't be too competitive for comedy.
Mm-hmm.
And the only thing is, people haven't had a drink, so there maybe the response isn't as you got to work harder for the response, I think,
Yeah.
or you just have to know that relax into this because it might be their first show of the day. They
Yeah.
haven't had a drink. Um,
Well, they might have had a drink. This
yeah,
is Edinburgh we're
yeah,
talking about.
yeah. I'll probably have had a drink. Um,
They won't have had too many drinks. So that's
yeah. But yeah, so with that, that's a free venue.
yeah.
So I'm not losing anything on the venue. Um, I'm gonna get the accommodation fine, and then I now work as like an admin assistant for a PR company.
Mm.
So I'm going to see if they can sort of help me write press releases and just sort of try and do it on the cheap.
Yeah.
Because I want that deadline of having to write a show and to write a show that I'm proud of,
Mm.
and also to have that month to make it better and refine it.
Yeah.
But I don't want to feel how I have other years where you walk in the room and you're like, oh, there's 6 people here. So
Yeah.
today I've lost. Because that's not a good way to start a show. Because in your
Yeah.
head, you're not I've got to make these 6 people laugh. You're going, well, those other 40 seats equate to X amount of money and I'm this amount down now.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're in a free venue every day, it's like, oh, there's 10 people here. Oh, well,
Yeah.
let's enjoy that. I've not lost anything. I can learn something from this and go again tomorrow.
Yeah.
Um, So yeah, but it is a big mental gym for a comedian, I think.
Yeah.
Edinburgh. It does build resilience, definitely.
You said that you do comedy because you love it. You know, it costs a lot to do
Mm.
big festivals like this. But do you feel because you're a professional that it takes some of the joy out of it?
What doing Edinburgh?
Yeah. Do you think comedy loses its joy when it is your profession because it's you have to deal with the admin and the everything else?
Do you know what? It's funny you should say it because I've been thinking that recently, and this is a conclusion I've come to. So for a while, I was doing it on its own,
Hmm.
and um, and I was going everywhere and anywhere. And so you're making the money, but then every gig you're like, this needs to go well
Hmm.
because I need to get booked back here because I need the money.
Hmm.
So then this job came up and I can work from home. And I was like, do you know what? That takes the pressure off it. That means that I can go to every gig
Yeah.
and I can become a better comedian because I'm not going to a gig and going, someone might be here and they might have an opportunity for me. I'm going there and going, right, let's have a good gig tonight, enjoy it.
Yeah.
And if something else comes out of it, great. If it doesn't, no harm done. Whereas I think that desperation when you need it is sort of detrimental to your performances because an audience can sense a desperation and it's hard to leave that
Yeah.
in the green room. Um,
Hmm.
so yeah, it is a weird one. And that's probably just my thing on it. And that also might come down to parts of my personality of like making everything so make or break when really it isn't.
Yeah.
Like I think because I've had gigs where like agents have come to see me and I thought, oh my God, if this happens, like you get carried away with yourself, don't you? Like, oh, they come to see me, if this happens, I'll get X, Y, Z, and then my life will be sorted.
Yeah.
And then they go, actually, you're not ready yet. And you're like, oh fuck, well that's that done.
Hmm.
When actually not every gig is like that. And good things that have happened in comedy have happened when I've least expected it and I've not really been chasing it. Don't know if that really answers the question.
Well, I mean, yeah, it does. I think you can. I guess my answer would be that you can fantasize about a lottery win, but you don't plan around it.
Exactly.
I
Yeah,
think
that is, yeah.
if it comes to you, it comes to you, and it's welcome, but you can't rely on anything.
Yeah, and I think so many people in comedy, and I was guilty of it for a while.
Hmm.
You see what other people get, and you're like, I have to get that because that'll prove that I'm good at it. Like live at the Apollo.
Hmm.
So many comedians are like, I have to get on live at the Apollo. Like I'm chasing live at the Apollo. But actually, if they stop, they've probably noticed there's loads of other opportunities that could have been coming up.
Yeah.
Like if they'd written a script, they might have got that into a pilot or but they're so focused on, no, I've got to get that 20 for that live at the Apollo that they just miss all the other things that could have happened.
Hmm.
And also, I think sometimes you get so locked into something that it's like that doesn't carry the same weight anymore. Like when you used to get live at the Apollo, the reason it was like, wow, is because off the back of that, you could sell out arenas because the viewing figures, because everyone was watching television and they all had four channels.
Yeah.
Now people have got
Yeah.
streaming services, people are watching content differently. So they're looking at small clips on TikTok and Instagram.
Yeah.
People can do live at the Apollo now and still not manage to sell out a Soho run. Like it's
Yeah.
a different beast now. And I think because comedy's a long game, you can start 10 years ago and be like, right, that's the goal. And people don't move their goals, but actually you need to move it because things are changing continuously.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
So when you go into, like, for example, your Edinburgh run this year,
Yeah.
do you go into it with objectives, with what I want to get X number of 5-star reviews, I want to get this, that, and the other? Do you have targets?
I'd want to get reviewed. I wouldn't ever be like, I want to get this amount of 5-star reviews because like you said, it's objective.
Yeah.
Like, or they could come into a bad show. I remember me and my friends, we did a split show about 5, 6 years ago. And it was like a review from almost sort of like a studenty person. Like, but when you Googled my name, it fucking come up right at the top. My mum made sure she told me, she was like, you seen that review of your Edinburgh? I was like, no. She was like, I'll read it to you. And it was like, it basically said, um, Fiona Ridgewell might be the most boring person I've ever met. and then it went on to my friend afterwards. It was like, no, I've just found the most boring. Like it was,
Oh God.
it was brutal. But then me and my friend who'd done the split show together, I can't remember what they'd said in it, but we could literally pinpoint the day that they'd come in, and we were like, yeah, fair. We were the most on that day. That review is apt. But other days, you walk out and people are like, oh my God, you were great. Oh, I'm going to tell my friends to come. So it's a really difficult thing to be reviewed, because they might just come in on a day where things are just a bit off for whatever things in your personal life. The wrong people are in the crowds, you just so I'd never put that as an objective. But I think I think for me, my objective is to just go up there with a show that I'm proud of and that I enjoy performing for that length of time, and that means something to me. I think I want people to be able to relate to it. And just the being able to write a through line of a show and to have it sort of resolved. Because normally I just sling all my stuff together and hope that it makes sense to someone. And I'd like to give it a bit more thought this year. But I've never done an hour. So it's a new challenge for me. So just doing that, I think, is a goal in itself, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe I should be more, what do you call it? When people are really like planning, they're like, I'm going to get this, this and this out of it. I'm like, oh, I'll just see. Let's just see. Who knows? For Funny Women, I got quite a nice review, so that was nice. And I did one in Brighton, and the guy put a really nice review in. And so there could be really bad ones out there, but I haven't seen them. So if there are, Mark, don't bring them to my door. But the one from like that Edinburgh, when it was bad, that definitely gave me a wobble, because I was quite a new comedian, and to say someone's boring, you're like, well, the one thing I can't be as a comedian is boring.
Right.
Like, no one wants to see someone who's boring. And it was literally like, why does she think any of this is worth telling anyone? So that definitely knocks your confidence. But again, for a comedian, the only way to get through that is to go, well, that's one person, get back up on stage, and like the audience will tell you whether this is boring or not. And the majority of the time they don't. They are like, we're enjoying this. Or even if not all of them are, some of them are. But another one that's renowned for that is like, when you do not only is it reviewers, it's like when you do the Comedy Store, when you're starting off and you have to do like your open spots, you get like taken into the room and sort of given your feedback to your face.
Oh wow.
And it's normally brutal. It is normally, and you just have to be like, cool, I'll work on that, thanks very much. And it'll be like one of the lines for me was, I really like you, I've got one problem, you're not funny.
Oh jeez.
You're mildly amusing. And I was like, well, mildly amusing's had to work with, though, innit? So let's crack on. But in the moment, you're like, fuck, that is brutal. And you just have to like shoulders back, chin up, and be like, thank you so much. I'll see you in 6 months when you invite me back and you do this to me again. Like, it is sort of like, comedy is a bit of a form of torture sometimes. So
yeah. Well, what about hecklers? Feedback in the room, let's call it.
Do you know what? That's a one that a lot of, when you tell people that do comedy, they're like, oh my God, what if you get heckled? What if you get heckled? And I'm always like, babe, the heckling is not the problem. Like, I wouldn't encourage it. I'm not encouraging people to heckle, because you are like derailing the show to an extent.
Yeah.
But a heckle, if you're having a good time up there, a heckle's not a problem, because Mark Simmons, who's a great comedian, he told me this thing, which it took me ages to realise. He was like, Fiona, because when people used to heckle me, which they didn't often, but if they just shout something, I'd resent them. And I'd be like, you've messed this up for me, because I was going to say this, this and this. And by doing that, you've stopped me from saying this, this and this. And that would come across that there was resentment from me towards the audience.
Right.
And he was like, no, Fiona, what you do is you go up there with your plan. So I'm going to say X, Y, Z. I'm going to go through the motions of this, and anything that happens in the room overrides that, and that's fine, and that's a joy to be in. Like, it's not, you're not like, oh, for fuck's sake, I was going to say this. You're like, cool, well, this has happened, so this is where we're going to.
Yeah.
And you just relax into it, and everyone's like, but you've got to be so quick, you've got to be so witty with heckles. No, you don't. You just have to respond to it as yourself.
Yeah.
Because people see a human and a human reaction, and they're like, oh, that's funny, because that's how I would have reacted to someone shouting your shit or whatever they shout. I don't even know what people shout. It's not normally. The worst ones are when people are so drunk that it's not either audible or it just doesn't make sense, because that really derails it. Because if you were talking to a drunk person, you would be like, how do I, you can't formulate sentences with them, really, can you? You can't formulate a conversation.
Yeah.
Because the worst one that ever happened to me wasn't a heckle. I had an Invisalign put in that week, like the day before.
Yeah.
And then, so an invisible brace. They were like, oh yeah, when you perform though, you just take it out. So I took it out for this gig at Glee in front of, like, I think it was like 400 people. And as I started to speak on stage, I was like, hello, so I'm Fiona, and I had this horrible lisp, and I couldn't get rid of this lisp. So then I got really self-conscious, and I was like, oh my God. I wasn't saying it out loud, but in my head I'm going, you've got a lisp now. And so the room went completely dead flat, because they could feel my sort of how self-conscious I was.
Yeah.
And then I went out to the car park, and these people just went, you know, you were really shit.
Oh, Jesus.
So they didn't heckle me on stage. They didn't have the balls. They waited till I was in the car park on my own. And what was mental about that is I'd driven to Cardiff to do 10 minutes.
Yeah.
You don't get paid when you do 10 minutes. So I'd driven like 5 hours, did 10 minutes, and then got called shit, and then had to drive 5 hours back alone. And I remember I was waitressing at the time, and I'd obviously been at work like on the Friday, and they were like, what are you doing tonight? So I'm just going to Wales. And they're like, cool, okay, that's normal. And then on the Saturday I was in work again, and they were like, didn't you go to Wales yesterday? And I was like, yeah, but I'm back. I was only there for 10 minutes. It's such an absurd life when you sort of really say it out loud. I remember them just looking at me like, your life doesn't make sense to us, so we've got no more questions for you.
Do you watch comedy the same way as a comedian, maybe as an audience member would?
Well, I didn't really watch it that much before.
Yeah.
But yes, and you have to be in the right mind for it, I think.
Yeah.
If your like confidence is low, you'll watch comedy and you'll be analysing it, and you'll be like, right, so what are they doing? What makes them so good? What are they doing differently that I'm not doing yet? Whereas like I did for math actually recently at Outside the Box. He got me to do 20 minutes opening for Reece James. And I did mine and then came off, and then I watched Reece he was doing like an hour, because I'd already been on for like 20 minutes. I was relaxed and I could just sit and enjoy that. But otherwise I think you are looking at stagecraft, joke writing, how they thread it together, callbacks, how they interact with the audience, and that does take you out of it. So I think that's why, I don't know, well, obviously you've been to loads of gigs, so you probably have seen it sometimes, where sometimes the audience don't necessarily laugh, but you'll hear like a laugh from the other comedians. And it might be that we just really appreciate how good a joke that is, but it just for whatever reason doesn't land with the audience. But I guess you don't often hear the other comedians, like, they're not laughing all the time. You notice it when it comes from that sort of back of the room, or at Angel where they're all in that side alley bit. You're like, oh, comedians like that one. So yeah, I think it is difficult to, I think, because we're always on as well, we're always trying to figure out how to get better. So you are constantly analysing.
So when you got into performing live comedy, was there anything that surprised you?
It's really like bland answer, but the time thing, like where people are like, if you're booked for 5 minutes, you have to do 5 minutes. You don't do like 10 seconds less, 10 seconds more, it's 5 minutes. And
Mm.
sometimes people will black mark you from a club if you go over your time. I remember performing my first 5 minutes at the Comedy Store, and I
Mm.
wasn't worried about the reaction. All I was worried about was that it had to be 5 minutes.
Oh,
Um, and even the whole thing now, like it's like if you're dying,
yeah.
even if it's like the audience hate you, you're hating it, you have to go to your 20-minute mark. Like, why make everyone suffer? Like, I'm sure they'd appreciate me not being here. But yeah, the time thing, apparently, the timing is because even like, so my uncle runs a venue in near like Portsmouth way,
Hmm.
and it's not, and it's more like a theatre, it's not really a comedy venue. But when the comedians, we started doing like mixed bill shows, and he was like, I really enjoy it, but they all keep looking at their watches like they don't want to be there. And I'm like, no, they're not. It's not because they don't want to be there. It's because they don't want to overrun their time. It's like, we don't care. And I was like, it's just a thing. Like, it's just a thing. He was like, well, we're going to get a big clock at the back so that they won't look at their watches. And I'm like, they'll still look at their watches.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've all got these massive vibrating watches on our wrist that basically go, right, you're on a 2-minute countdown, wrap it up and get the hell off. Yeah, that never changes.
Have you had a moment that either has been the best moment in comedy, or you've just made like the horriblest mistake on stage? It's a sort of moments that stand out in your mind.
Oh, that is a good question, but uh elating moment. No, so I think there's like flickers of that, and there's no one that I'm like, oh my God, that stands out so far from the rest of the gigs. There's always like moments in gigs where you're like, oh, that was such a nice moment.
Yeah.
And I think now what I'm trying to do is like clip those up, maybe put them on my like social media if there's like a flicker of a nice moment without sort of burning material. So I'll put like my crowd work or something on social media.
Yeah.
Um, Terrible moment. Probably that one in Wales, to be honest, when they shouted that I was shit, but that was off stage, but it was reflective of what had happened on stage. Um, yeah, just those ones where they go dead silent. Like
Yeah.
I cannot handle that because there's like this feeling of like they feel almost like sorry for you, as if they think that it always goes like that. And you're like, it rarely goes like this, guys. Don't worry about me. I've got a thick enough skin to get through it. But because there's no energy in the room, you can't be playful with it. You just sort of go down with it.
Yeah.
But they don't happen that often now. I think because I'm more relaxed on stage. That's why you do your stage time.
Yeah.
Because then you just become more yourself on stage, and you're just like, oh yeah, that wasn't as fun as it could have been, but it wasn't awful. Whereas I remember when I used to get nervous,
Yeah.
and well, you probably know from being an audience member, but you can sense the nerves of someone, and that would
Yeah.
then make the audience tighten up, and then it's just this horrible not back and forth, just this flat room.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's still them that I hate. There haven't been any. Oh, actually, no, there is one stand-up one. I won't name the club, but I did a gig at a club, and it was so rowdy. Like there was a stag do who were in the army, so like double testosterone at the back of the room, like 20 of them.
Yeah.
And before I went on, they were having this like shouting match with the MC.
Right.
And then it got to the point where the other audience members were like, get out. So they started arguing amongst themselves. Like the audience started policing themselves. They're like, get out. We don't want you here. And they were like arguing back with them. And then I think from the stage, the MC thought that they'd been removed
Right.
because I can't remember what happened. I think one got up and left. So he thought they'd gone.
Yeah.
So he was like, well, it was the stage, Fiona Ridgewell. And as soon as I got on, it started like really kicking off again, and the audience was shouting back and forth at each other, and people were like, let her do her set, let her speak. And these blokes at the back of the room were going, no, fuck off. It was horrible. It was the most sort of threatening environment and this is like in a room of like 300 odd people.
Mm.
And it's the only time that I've been on stage and thought, this could actually turn into like a physical fights
Yeah.
because people were getting so angry with one another. And the problem was that the rest of the audience was shouting for these people to be removed, but the club didn't have good enough security that they'd gone over and said, "Can you leave?" The blokes said no, and they'd gone, "Oh, cool, okay, no worries." Just sort of let them. And that was in that one. And even in that one, Mark, I stayed on for my time. And I was like, I was just basically this woman on stage, just watching this sort of fight break out in front of me whilst trying to do jokes. And in the end, me just ranting at these blokes at the back. But it was weird because it wasn't comedy, but the crowd were behind me because they were like, "We don't like them." Like I was just
Yeah.
the one voice voicing the opinion of it was awful, yeah. And I vowed since that one that I wouldn't ask to go back to that club because I just thought you have to give a certain level of safety to the audience and to the comedians.
Yeah.
Like when I left that one of those big blokes was outside and he called me a little cunt. So I was like, this isn't on to be, like,
Yeah.
and don't get me wrong, I've been doing this like nearly 10 years, like I said,
Yeah.
and that's two occasions where it's been nasty, like the one in Wales, which to be fair, I just like whatever. But
Yeah.
that one actually was quite volatile, the one with the stag do group. So it doesn't happen often, but when it does, you just go, right, what could I have done differently? And to be honest, the only thing I could have done differently there was refuse to go on whilst they were still in the room. But
Right.
then you almost feel that it makes it look badly on me. But it was an impossible situation.
Yeah.
So yeah, that one I just thought, well, if the club can't provide that and that happens, I don't know how often it happens, but I think it's happened before where because they just don't have the security and they need the security, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because that's too many people on a lot of alcohol and big if you're letting big groups in, you need to police it a bit.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, that one. We're unhappy with that one. Won't be going back.
Quite right too. How is it for you being a woman in comedy? Do you feel it perspectives are different, either from audiences or from venues or from promoters?
Um yeah, it's a weird because obviously I think when I started, that was very much in the era of like it's one woman on every bill. Not every bill, but like one woman. Like
Yeah.
you wouldn't really get to meet the other girls because
Right.
there was very rare. Like I remember doing a club and it was like five men and me, and that was quite often.
Mm.
So and you feel it in green rooms. And the blokes are lovely, and I've got loads of bloke friends, but
Yeah.
sometimes it is nice because there is still, I think, sometimes a subconscious bias with an audience of when a woman walks out, they go, "Oh, here we go.
Mm.
What's she going to be whinging about?" There is that. And until there's another woman on the bill, for a long time, you're like, I must just be shit. I just must be not good at this. And then all of a sudden you're on the bill with other women and you go, hold on, they're not getting the reaction they deserve. Why are they? Okay, so there is some sort of thing going on in this crowd. And I've only ever like visibly seen it twice actually.
Right.
Uh where once I think it was in like Bristol, I did this gong show and it was like loads of comedians getting up. And as soon as I got up, this row of blokes got up and went to the bar. Like they didn't even let me say hello. Like they were just like, she ain't worth watching.
Wow.
Um, and there was another time in Liverpool where they said something about me being a woman and not being funny, and it's like, grow up. Like you've got sisters, you've got mums. You're telling me you've never laughed with them. They've never made you laugh about anything. Like
Yeah.
I don't know where that comes from, like why it's even a thing. But yeah, I do think it is a thing, and I do think now that when I'm on bills with other women, it is a nicer environment for me because yeah, there's just a bit of I can relate to other people on the bill, but also in another way, it's harder because like the men,
Mm.
you go, oh shit, we're all talking about the same things.
Yeah.
We're all talking about Hindus and dating and what, like, do you know what I mean? Like, whereas when it was just me, it's like, well, no one's going to talk about the Hindu they went on recently. No one's going to, because they're all blokes. They haven't got that in their wheelhouse. But now it's like, oh shit, what are you going to speak about? Because I might speak about that. Um, so there are always like pros and cons to everything, but I'm definitely all for it. There's always this thing as well, though, of like tokenism and do we get things because we're a woman.
Right.
And I don't like that, because I feel like you're not getting it. We were getting it because, like, someone once said to me, it's this pendulum theory, and the pendulum has swung so far one way, it now needs to swing the other way to come back to the middle. So we weren't getting stuff for so long because we were women. Now we need to get it because we're women, and then eventually you just get it. But no one's getting it because they're a woman, if you know what I mean. But at least the opportunities are there now. Like when it went to like one woman being on, I think they did that on Mock the Week, didn't they?
Yeah.
That they had to include one woman on the panel.
Yeah.
But all those women are great.
Yeah.
All the women that I would put them on there regardless of whether they're a woman or not, because of their content and because of their performances. So I think that's unfair to say that people get things because we're women. So yeah, it feels like you can't really win that one.
Yeah.
Do you ever feel that in the audience though? Do you feel like there's...
Well, I don't.
Or not really?
I suppose realistically, if I went through the list of all the names of the comedians that I've seen, probably I would say more than half would be female.
Oh, okay.
Certainly more in recent years. But I feel like there are more female comedians. I say female comedians who are women now than there were 10 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
But my first rule is make me laugh. That's all I ask.
Yeah.
But again, I'm in London, so I don't know if it's a metrocentric thing where there's a lot of venues, there's a lot of gigs. Whereas if I was in somewhere they have like one club or one theatre.
Yeah. Like one a month sometimes.
I don't know who they would choose to prioritise or who their motivation is to book. So
well, again, so the gig that I did that I used to run, and it was in like a small village, and I remember someone saying, "Oh, all the women you bring here are really rude. They're really rude. Like they're really rude." And I was like, "They're not." It must have just been something that they had in their mind before the comedian even opened their mouth, because they're not. And what was funny is like the bloke that had been on before had talked about his penis like 4 times, and no one had said, "Oh, he was quite rude." But like it's just this prejudice that they had in their mind that, oh, because all the women do, they're a bit filth when they come on stage. It's like, no, they're not. Okay.
Yeah.
And I really noticed it from a promoter, because I don't normally promote, but from the promoter side, I was like, oh, you are tougher on them. You do have this prejudice before they've even started.
Yeah.
And people don't know they have it.
Is it like a historical thing where you've heard comedians talk about their dicks for so long? You mentioned one vagina, no one's ever talked about it before.
Yeah, it must. Yeah, God knows.
Taboo.
But yeah, that's the last I'll say on it.
Yeah. Have you learned any key lessons that you always take forward from show to show? A philosophy or one lesson that you learned early on, perhaps?
Well, the one that everyone says is that if you're enjoying yourself, the audience will enjoy themselves. It took me ages to know that. It's like, just do it right and do it well and they'll like you. And it's like, no, what people thrive off is like you having a nice time, and then they'll have a nice time. I'm like, oh, cool. The one that Mark told me about, go up with your plan, but don't be so rigid that you won't adapt to the room that you're in. So have the plan, but also go with the flow in the room. And yeah, I think every time I just go on, just before, I'm just like, right, just relax, be yourself. Which sounds, because everyone's like, oh, be yourself is the word advice. But I know myself quite well. So if I'm emceeing and someone says something to me, I don't think, oh God, what would be a witty response? I just respond like I was having a chat with them. And sometimes that goes well for me. And other times people are like, well, that didn't really go anywhere. But we just go, right, thanks for being here. We'll move on to the next bit. Like, it's never the be all and end all. And they normally end up being nice gigs. So yeah, that's my philosophy. Those 3 probably.
Fantastic. Well, then finally, the last question, the question I ask all of my guests, can you please sum up comedy in a nutshell?
I think live comedy is a group of people sharing an experience in that moment that will never be repeated, and it brings you together because you all share that moment, and when you laugh in it, the feeling in that room, I think when a whole room comes together and laughs at one thing, I think it just builds a connection. It's just connection, isn't it? But it's quite a joyous connection, I think. Yeah, in a nutshell. That's it.
Fantastic. Well, Thank you so much for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it. Look, I always sound surprised when I say I enjoyed something, but I had a lovely time. Thanks, Mark.
See
Take
you
care.
soon.
Bye.